Welcome back to another episode of the Geek Podcast.
This is your host, Charlie Radio Williams. And this is SeanLuc.
Welcome back to another episode of the Geek Podcast.
Hello. Well, first of all, it's good to see you are back, and your lighting is real suspect right now.
How is it suspect?
It's giving off To Catch a Criminal vibe.
What are you talking? Listen, I tried my best. I'm working with the lighting that we got. You know, do you want me? I can turn it back on, the background light.
No, I'm just saying you're just coming off real suspect right now.
Person who has mad orange around him in the background.
Who? Hey Google, change Charlie's desk light to blue. Does that help? There you go. Look at that. Look at that. Geektopians, if you're tuning in, first, oh my God, it's been a long time. What's up, Geektopians? I'm Charlie Radio Williams.
And this is SeanLuc.
Yeah, that was a bad delay, sir. I need you to keep up. This is a show that we shoot the shit, and if you're not doing your part to shoot the shit, then I don't know. We're just going to have to get rid of you.
Wow, really? This is
that's
so back, and you don't want to go ahead and literally just toss me out?
As always. So, Geektopians, I guess it's just you and me one-on-one. This is our first episode back, and it is our Halloween episode. And I will bring SeanLuc back. For those listeners who are listening and can't watch this, or will be watching this later on, you'll notice that I have the power and control again to send SeanLuc to the background, to the depths of the demon realm. And it's all with the click of a button.
I'm very upset.
Enough said. You see, click of a button. He's gone and he's back. I am like the Doctor Strange of this podcast.
Are you done?
Are
you done? Are you done with your multiverse of madness, or in this case, multiverse of mad power?
I'm done. I am the podcast sorcerer supreme.
The podcast sorcerer supreme.
Correct.
What in God's green earth have you been doing?
Been up to a lot of things, Geektopians. Just to let you know, we recently did NYCC 2022. It was very overwhelming. It was a lot to go with. Definitely larger, bigger crowd than we expected, but we had fun. I was there for 2 days, and Sean was like a sheep there for 4 days as usual.
How is that sheep? Excuse me while I enjoy my time that I paid for.
Sir, you are, I don't know what to say about you. You amaze me. You are 40 plus years old. And you're able to do the con 4 days back to back. God bless your feet. God bless your feet. Your insoles, your heels. I don't know how you got it in you. Don't.
Let's put it this way. I may be 40, but you got to get that cardio in. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
It's all about those steps, right? It's all about those steps.
Got to get that cardio in.
Oh, why you look like that? Once again, you giving me To Catch a Criminal vibes.
All right, fine. Hold on.
All right, no. Oh, what are you like? Like a religious holy figure now, brightening up. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, and we're over you, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are joined by a fellow creator, friend of the show. He's been on at least twice so far.
Oh yeah, with another guest of the show,
with Chris Conan.
Chris Conan Burgos.
So we're welcoming you back to the show, Rubin. Let me bring him on. Here he comes.
Hey,
hello, sir.
What's up, guys?
Man? How you doing? Long time no speak. I feel like it's been forever.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I was at that same show you were, all 4 days too.
Yeah. Ari, first of all, I want to apologize about the banter. I keep telling Sean that he needs to put himself in check, or he's going to be put in timeout, and he's the reckless one of the show. He's just reckless, and he doesn't take the Geektopians into consideration. He doesn't take your time into consideration. and I apologize. I sincerely apologize. I just wish he wasn't
Ignore
like
him,
that.
please.
I wish he wasn't like that. Like yeah, yeah. You know what, Ari? It's like every now and then you just have that one co-host that you're like, and he disappeared. You see, this is what I talk about. All right, I'm just gonna send him to the back. All right, yeah. So it's just me and you. How goes it, Ari?
I'm all right. I'm all right. How are you today, Charlie?
I'm great. Speaking about Comic Con, what was your experience like this year?
Oh no, it was interesting because I was walking around this year. The previous year we had a table, but this year we didn't get one. So
Mhm.
walking around a lot, um, you know, in Javits Center, fighting the crowds. I got to go to a lot of the panels though. A lot of really good panels this year.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
What would you say was your overall feeling of the con this year compared to last year?
Oh, there were definitely more people this year. It's definitely
Mhm.
bigger this year. Um, you know, it was almost. I thought it was almost back to pre pandemic capacity. You really felt like you were, you know, finding people, but at the same time, I like the way that they opened up the show floor a little bit. There was more room, especially on Saturday. Usually Saturday's big press in there, but it seemed like you could actually get around this year.
Mhm.
Which is very
Uh,
good. Like,
Yeah. I also like that they had that opening from the show floor directly to where you went up for the panels. That was nice. That outlet at the end over there.
oh, the extension,
Yeah,
extended area now.
yeah.
well, last year definitely felt more like an indie con. Like it felt like it was. I know we were just coming out of the pandemic. The convention was trying to get back on its feet. The big hitters like Marvel, DC, Image, like everybody pulled out. So last year, I enjoyed it because it felt like a old school version of what NYCC once was. But this year, I enjoyed it as well. It was just overwhelming.
Yeah, I can see that.
I kind of I agree to a certain extent as my chair falls. Hold on.
See, come on, get
Okay.
yourself together.
Yeah, I know. I got to get myself together. It's been such a long time, but I feel the same way. A sense of overwhelming, but I enjoyed it. Like being there for 4 days, I was actually able to do stuff that I haven't been able to do in such a long time. I was able to go to some panels that I had never even like I couldn't even do before. Right? Every panel, I would say every panel, with the exception of maybe like two, was
Okay.
actually filled to capacity.
All right. All right. All right.
So despite the fact that it was sold out, it was all that stuff, I do feel like there was a less numbers than in like 2019, despite the fact that how big it felt.
Okay. Well, I was just happy to be back in the con. Because I feel like for us on the East Coast, this is like the biggest con of the year. Even though I think Anime NYC is coming up, Big Apple Con is coming up, but then I feel like Big Apple Con has a con like every month now.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, it was really good to be back at the Javits. It was really good to see a lot of friends, a lot of faces. The creative aftercon that is put together by Sebastian over at Nerds of the Round. That's always a pleasure of just seeing the guys drinking beers, shooting the shit. Yeah, yeah, it was a lot. Definitely a lot. So, Ari,
Yes.
I want to talk about your new book.
Oh yes. Thank you.
I'm going to let Sean. I'm going to let Sean have some fun here for a moment. Sean, would you mind reading the description of the book?
Sure, one whole second as you literally throw this on me on the
Because
fly right
this
now.
is what I talk about, Geektopians. Sean is never prepared, and look at him.
Never
He's
prepared. What?
he's always accusatory, blaming me every chance that he gets. I don't know how I do it. It's like sometimes I feel like instead of him being my partner on the show, he's a personal assistant that he's like an intern. He's like an intern.
I hate you so much.
He's like an intern. Ari, once again, I apologize. I feel like when doing this whole show, I'm going to be just apologizing for Sean's actions, and this is not what you signed up for. Geektopians, we can do better. Are you ready?
Yes, I am ready. God
Okay.
damn. All right. Peer into the darkness of midnight in the macabre of these 32 illustrated Gothic horror poems and microfictions. From the dark enchanted forest to the furthest reaches of cosmic space, from the collective memory of myth and story to monsters conjured from your own subconscious minds. These are the tales of the abyss. We invite you to gaze beyond the boundaries of reality and into the nightmare realms. Join us if you dare. What
That
you
was
think?
That's an excellent job.
tell me you play D&D without telling me you play D&D.
Oh, really?
Tell me you're a dungeon master without telling me you're a dungeon master.
Why you gotta go there? Huh? Why do
Oh,
you have
you did a good job. You did a good job. I couldn't have done it any better. That's not a jab. That's true. You did a good job.
So Ari, tell us about your book. You know, obviously we gave the description, but there's a lot more to it.
Into That Darkness Peering is the
Into
title of the
that,
book.
it is Into That Darkness Peering. I wrote it. Marika Brousianou illustrated it. Actually, I met her years ago at a Creator Connections panel, the Comic Book School Creator Connections panel, and then we really started talking at the Twins Creator AfterCon. So it was relevant to what we were talking about before. And a couple of years ago, actually last year we did this. It feels like a long time ago. We started with this idea, right? A friend of mine, Gene Hoyle, who's an indie comics guy. Some of you might know him from Florida. He had this idea 2 years ago that writers should get involved with Inktober. Like it shouldn't just be an artist thing. So he set up this whole thing, like where writers would do a prompt or something, and then, you would do a story or a few lines or whatever, a panel or whatever, and then you'd be paired with an artist, and the artist would draw it, and you would kind of team up for all of October. Didn't really work out that year. I didn't know the artist; it was someone I was randomly paired with, and it kind of, kind of fell apart. But I really liked the idea, and the following year, which was last year, I decided I wanted to do that again, and I had all of these kind of short poems, gothic horror, microfiction type of things. Some of them I had developed first on my Twitter, where I do daily prompts every day, and they're just sitting there. I said I want to publish them in some form. They should be illustrated. So I contacted Marika and asked her if she would want to do something for Inktober last year. So we started doing these things where I'd send her a poem every day or a short microfiction, and she would illustrate it each day in October. And we liked it, and we liked it so much that we decided to expand the project and make it into this book.
Okay.
And then we had to figure out how to put it together, because each page can stand on its own. Each one of these stories and poems is its own individual thing, but yet we also wanted to have it feel like a unified whole. So we organized it, because it's Gothic horror, we organized it around some of Edgar Allan Poe's work. So Into That Darkness Peering is a quote that some of you might recognize from The Raven. It's from Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. And then each chapter in the book is also an allusion to a poem or a story by Edgar Allan Poe. And we kind of group the stories and illustrations thematically, so that you could experience each one individually, but so that it would also work as a unified whole.
How long did it take you guys? I mean, you're pushing it out right now, which is we're in the season for ghouls and ghosts. All right, I
Yes.
can't be Sean. I can't be Sean.
Ghouls and ghosts.
All right, you know what? Don't get sent back to the back. All right. Anyway, we're in.
We need that voice with the other lighting.
Yeah, that's true.
We're in the right season. So was it planned to have it published and ready to go for Halloween, or did it just fall within the right time to get it out in this season?
I mean, I think we did want it to come out around Halloween. We actually released it a little early because at that time we weren't sure if Comic Book School was going to have a table at New York Comic Con or not.
Okay.
So I had originally planned to put it out around Halloween, about 2 weeks earlier, and then we kind of pushed up the production so that it would be ready by New York Comic Con.
All
Turns out
right.
we didn't have a table, but yes, it was planned to be at this time of year.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. What can you, without giving away too much of the book, what can you tell us is your favorite either arc or chapter of the book?
Um, I like the I like all of them. It's like asking you to pick what your favorite child is. But I think that there are a few that there's one called Last Request,
Okay.
which is a poem, and I think that the poem and the illustration just go really really well together.
All right.
And I think it really it captures the spirit of what we were trying to do in this book. It's a gothic poem about a someone asking to be a ghost so that they can see their still living lover one more time.
Oh.
Um, and the way Marika drew it with the living person on the couch and the speaker kind of ghostly behind them, where they weren't even able to be seen. I mean, we could see them as the reader, but the person who's still alive can't see them the way she illustrated it. I just love that one. I think that one is my favorite. I know that Marika's favorite is the one that's just called haiku. It's kind of a cosmic haiku. And she drew this really beautiful illustration for it. And I think as the illustrator, I think that was her favorite illustration in the book.
That's cool.
Now, were all the stories that you guys intended to be in the book, did all the stories that you guys work on make it into the book, or were there some that left out that you guys kind of like, maybe that would have been a good addition, or it just didn't have the flow?
All the stories that we worked on originally for the Inktober are in the book, plus a couple more. We
Okay.
ended up expanding it. There are other things that I wished could have been in the book that I could have included, but it just didn't work out in terms of the timing or in terms of things that I was getting the rights back to, because a lot of the poems have been published before. Probably about a third of the material has been published
Oh, okay.
in literary journals and in literary journals and things like that. Um, but and there were a couple of things that I wasn't sure what I could use, but everything that I ended up sending her to her to be drawn did end up in the book, and then we had to
Okay.
figure out where it went.
What were, and I think this is, I know Sean has some more questions because Sean spent a lot of time reading it.
I read the
I
whole
am,
thing. I was amazed. I loved some of them. The illustrations alone were like amazing. But I will ask my questions in a little bit. Go ahead and finish, Charles.
so my
Sorry,
last
1 second. I
question.
just
Uh-huh.
my computer's running out of battery. Hold on 1 second.
Oh
Um,
no,
yeah.
that's
No.
oh
There we
oh
go. There we
no,
go.
oh
There we go.
no.
Yeah, I think when the
Um,
cat came by earlier, she
That's
must
why
have
I'm
knocked
like
it out.
plugging up my stuff now because
Yeah.
it's like I'm over here trying to. Because I
uh,
have two laptops right now working on.
so what you're saying is your cat is like Sean's cat, and Sean's cat gets very jealous and wants to get on screen,
Yep.
and we have to be like, no, no, Sean, this is the cat's time. You can't be on screen right now. We need the cat. People like the cat more than you, Sean.
Apparently,
Um,
to be honest, apparently, like because
uh,
whenever the cat's on there, our ratings like spike.
yeah, I don't know what I've done to your cat. Your cat is always assaulting me, and
Which one?
Embryon is always
Well,
assaulting me.
if it helps, Umbreon attacks everybody.
So I don't know what to say. But Ari,
Yes.
wow, I got sidetracked off of cats, and not the musical. Um, so with releasing this book prior to it coming out, what are some of the difficulties that you faced with once again, other than the selection of choices of things that did get in and didn't get in, waiting for information on the rights of certain things if you can publish it. What were some other difficulties and hurdles that you found yourself dealing with along the way of getting this done?
Okay. So the biggest difficulty that we had, and I should give a shout out to D. Alley from Comic Book School.
Okay.
because she worked on the book design. She did the book design, and she did a hell of a job on it. But it was really figuring out how to release it, where to release it, and to find someone who could put the book together like we wanted.
Okay.
Because Marika and I's original idea, you'll see that it's a big format book. It's actually an A4 page size, which is a European size, the size of a European magazine or a sheet of European letter paper. Um, and we did that because since each page exists individually,
Mhm.
and this isn't available yet, but it will be um, in the near future. We thought we could sell some of these as prints in addition to selling the book.
Okay.
And
Oh,
that was one of my ideas as a writer. When you're
Mhm.
at a con, you have a table full of books, and the guy next to you is an artist, and they have stacks and stacks, art and these huge displays, and everyone's going over to there, and you got to try to get them to come over and actually pick up your book and look through it.
Mhm.
So if we have these standalone art pieces, right? I could do the same thing as the artist, get people to come, sell some of the art, but also get people to look at the books, including this one and the other books that I would have on my table as well.
Mhm.
Now, not being an artist myself, I thought that the A4 size would be great because the European page sizes, like most of their measurements as opposed to ours,
Mhm.
actually make sense, and they're all the same aspect ratio. So you could go to A3 or A5, up or down, and you don't have to, know anything to resize them because as long as the resolution is good enough, you could size them up and down. So that was our brilliant plan. Um,
I think that's genius. That.
except,
Uh huh.
except that A4 is apparently not a common size, and it was difficult to find a or a printing house that could do an A4 full bleed book.
really?
It severely limited our options because the thing with this book, and one of the reasons why I self-published this rather than
Uh-huh.
trying to go through a publishing house, is that it kind of straddles the different genres that I work in. So
Okay.
I
Okay.
did this with a comics artist who I met at New York Comic Con a number of years ago, as I said. So there's definitely the comics aspect to it, but there's also the poetry aspect of it, right? Which is a very different kind of readership and a different kind of market, and the microfiction, the gothic horror aspect of it. So I didn't want to just use something that was a comic specific thing,
Okay.
even though they're the best at doing full bleed books and they do that kind of thing all the time. I needed to have it on Amazon where the book people were, where the poetry people would be able to find it, right?
Okay.
People who aren't going to Comic Cons and, walking around, people who are, read poetry or gothic fiction, things of that nature. I had work in an Edgar Allan Poe themed anthology, and I thought maybe some of those readers would want to be in. But when it came to, I guess I should have done more research beforehand, but when it came to finding a service that could do A4 and full bleed
Mhm.
with the ink and paper requirements that we would need, because, you know, the illustrations are really nice and you need to get them printed properly
Okay.
on good paper. Um, it ended up severely limiting our options of who we could go with.
Okay.
And the hardest part was actually working through the customer service with Amazon to get
Mm,
them to be able to print a book properly. Because I'll say this in their favor, you can speak to someone 24 hours a day. You call them at 2 in the morning and say there's something wrong with my proof. You'll speak to a person, but
Mhm.
you'll never speak to the same person twice. And they can't
Okay.
transfer you, and they have no idea what the previous person you talked to
Yeah.
did. So that was actually the biggest challenge, was figuring out how to do the A4 size in a full bleed book and have um, global distribution on Amazon or a similar platform.
So I think your idea is smart. I see what you mean by, like, in one aspect, when you have a table, when you have a con, you're now able to keep up as far as, like, getting your material out there the same way that, other illustrators and artists are getting their stuff out. So whether if you have somebody coming to the table and they're like, "Hey, I want to pick this up as reading material, or I want to pick this up because I love the artwork. It's both the best worlds. But then to a distribution part of it, it's kind of like, ooh, like this is not the, I guess, the general book size.
Right.
So, but I think that's kind of good because then it makes the book a very in itself unique. It's not just a unique read, it's a unique display of artwork and literature together. And to your point, like this may be a book that's open to everybody, but the audience is that horror or that gothic Edgar Allan Poe, like. So I think I can see the ups and downs on it, but I think you guys made you made it a decision that most people would probably overlook, but I think it's still a good decision. You know,
Well,
you
good.
know your audience, yeah.
You made
Hopefully,
hold
hopefully.
hold on. I love you too. Okay.
And
Your
Sean
cat
wants to-
actually, your cat actually lets you hold her. Mine, no.
No,
Now,
she won't let me go. That's the problem.
that's the nice one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the nice one.
So I agree to making this. To me, you're right. Like to make it a very unique piece, and then especially doing the macabre, making that, and that's alone is just a very European style, And to be honest with you, like I read the whole thing, right, legit from all 80 something pages, right. And obviously there are some of my favorites. I'm just gonna give general descriptions, right? The Day of the
Right.
Dead and Jupiter. That's it.
Oh, Jupiter. Yeah, Jupiter came out really, really well.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
Like and the writing behind that as well. Like
Mhm.
it was just so, to me, that Jupiter one was heartbreaking.
Well, thank you. That's it's good to hear, right?
So
And yeah, and Marika is she's just an incredible artist. And
yeah, and
and the thing with this is she had more freedom than you would normally have with a comics project because there aren't panel descriptions. And we discussed some of the things, like there were certain ones where we discussed like, oh, I'd want to see it in this way. But for the most part, she had a lot of freedom to interpret the poems or microfictions
Oh, okay.
as she would. Um, and then, there were usually a number of options in the early stages and we would discuss them and that type of thing. But she really had much more so than on other comics projects I've worked on where you have a script and, this panel description. And yes, there's always the artist is going to put their own spin on it. But this was really a true collaboration in that sense because she really took some of these and interpreted them in ways that I wouldn't have necessarily have done so, but
Okay.
which came out really well. It came out, much better.
so you were talking something earlier about, like, say for example, you guys got a booth, you would make. So I just want to say, obviously I'm not, if you guys do that, like if you guys make each one of them like its own, like say for example, it's its own poster,
Right.
right? I would love to have her sign just that artistry, right? And have you sign just because the poem work is, and you can see the influences of Edgar Allan Poe and all of them, Sean Murray's art designs, things like that. It's such I'm flabbergasted by it, like because I love like goth stuff. So like to me, it was just a great book, and everybody who's into goth, who's into like horror, who's into all that stuff, you guys need to get it. That's just my plug. Sorry, my
Yeah, I'm going to take that snippet. I'm going to put that right.
Don't worry, Ari. I will make sure that Sean gets no credit. I will make sure that I will tell everybody that on October 20th, 2022, Ari was sitting there and then he just poof had the idea. He was like, "Hey, you know what? Posters, signage, got this." And whenever I hear Sean talks about credit, I'm like, "No, you're wrong. You had nothing to do with that."
No, we did have the idea for the posters. I was saying the quote. We were going to use the
Yeah.
quote as like a
Yes.
promotional
He
material.
did have the idea for the posters,
Yeah.
like because he
Yeah.
was talking about Comic-Con.
Yeah. We used to actually we decided, we decided which 10 we were going to do as prints, and that's the next step. Now that the book is out, now we can
Okay.
work on that. But the first thing was just getting the book out there, getting it out in time for Halloween season. Because it's a kind of book that needs to come out at this time of year. because yes, people like Sean who are into goth stuff, you know, into Edgar Allan Poe, that kind of thing, they'll buy it,
Mm.
year round. Thing. But it was really important to us to get this book out for the Halloween season because so many more people will be willing to give it a look during this time of year, right?
So I do have a question because I
Yep.
know like your last book too was it was a collaboration book that you did. It's actually I see it in the background right there. Um,
Yeah.
for you, I guess it's fair to say that you're influenced by and you're an avid fan of Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
Can you kind of let us and the Geektopians know, like, how did you come into becoming, like, how did you end up becoming an avid fan of Edgar Allan Poe? Was it something that, like, you read into his stuff when when you were a kid? Was it that you just found your literature style within his works? Share that with us.
Okay, so actually, I go through these phases where I have a lot of different writing styles. I
Okay.
have stuff that I come out with. This story I stole to Ahoy that's coming out. That's just a bunch of cheese puns sprung together
Mm,
loosely around a crime story that's going to come out in November. Um, I had one where God created the universe drunk, very Terry Pratchett style, fantasy type of thing. Um, but I go through these phases where I get into a particular author and they end up being a huge influence for a while. With Edgar Allan Poe, it's not just Edgar Allan Poe; it's all of the capital R romantic poets, Poe and Coleridge and Blake and Byron, and those types of people. And when I write poetry, I really write a lot of formal poetry, a lot of metered and rhymed poetry.
okay.
And Edgar Allan Poe actually he's really good at that. If you go through a lot of his poems, the way he uses meter and rhythm and rhyme in his poems um, is really quite exceptional. And the reason why the poems sound the way they do, why you need to read an Edgar Allan Poe poem out loud, is because he is such a master of that. Um, he's such a master of the poetic technique. I actually personally prefer his poetry to his short fiction. I love his short fiction, but I do prefer his poetry. And when I write poetry, he's one of the models that I use because I do write a lot of gothic themes, um, and I do have that kind of dark fantasy kind of aspect to my poetry as well. But it's the meter, it's the rhyme scheme, it's the way that um, it's the idea of this insanity that kind of pervades all the whole creative enterprise, and
Okay.
the idea of the things that we don't see, things on the edge of reality. I've always been influenced by that, and even going back to things that aren't gothic, like Marika and I are both big fans of Sandman. Um,
Okay.
we'll say that, like both of us are. And Sandman was the book I think I told you last time that brought me back to comics as an adult. So I always had a predilection for that kind of gothic stuff, and I go more for that atmospheric gothic than for
Okay.
like slasher, gore, splatterpunk. Like that's not me. I'm more in that Edgar Allan Poe, Neil Gaiman type of
Mm.
range of horror. But even going back earlier, like the book that made me want to become a writer in the first place was Lord of the Rings. And you
Oh,
don't
really?
think of it, you don't think of it like that. Well, when I was in seventh grade and I read Lord of the Rings, I got The Hobbit from the Scholastic Book Fair,
Okay.
and that was it for me. And I was like, oh, maybe those games I'm playing with my castle Legos, maybe someone would actually want to read that. It's not that far away. But if you think about it, not so much in The Hobbit, although there's some, but in the Lord of the Rings with the ring wraiths and the
Mhm.
Witch King and the Army of the Dead, there's actually a lot of that kind of stuff in there, you know. Um, and from there, going back, even a lot of my literary influences, Charles Dickens uses. There isn't really the supernatural in Charles Dickens,
Okay.
but he uses a lot of techniques of the Gothic writers.
Okay.
If you read a lot of that stuff. And going back, I've always loved books like Frankenstein, Dracula, Wuthering Heights, all of those classic 19th century Gothic literature. Gothic novels, and even that, is also in there. And you'll see in this book, there's a ton of literary references to various things if you can find them. If you know what you're looking. You don't need to know them to get the poems, but if you do, there's more of that. So it's always been a part of the various influences that it's had for me, and it sort of comes together when I write poetry. Edgar Allan Poe and Samuel Taylor Coleridge are probably the two biggest influences
Mm.
on my poetry.
Do
Personally,
you ever find yourself in a place where like you're writing and you're so heavily influenced by those writers that you find yourself having to stop to say, you know what, I want to write, but I need to break away from it.
I'll
You know,
tell
it's
you,
like when
I was writing something probably about 10 years ago, and I thought it was the best thing I ever wrote. I thought that this is awesome. It's just coming out right, thinking I'm coming up with it myself. Turned out, I realized when I was done with it and I started editing it, I realized, you know what, I've heard this before. And I started flipping through my books, and turns out it was a chapter from Good Omens that I somehow threw my way.
oh,
It was
so
actually
you
Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. I was like, wait a minute, this is almost
Wow.
word for word, and I couldn't recite it word for word. Like I don't have a photographic memory or anything like
uh-huh,
that, but somehow that had slipped into my subconscious, and thank God I am published that
uh-huh.
piece. I caught
I
it
mean, that would be
early
crazy.
enough,
You're
but I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, what
At
was the
least,
passage?
at least, at least now, and going into the back to the book, at least now with your work, you pay a strong homage to a
Yes,
lot of Edgar Allan Poe's writings.
yes. Well, this
So
is this is intentionally, and the good thing about Edgar Allan Poe in that area is that he has public domain, so that if you are
okay.
writing, so like we did an Emily Dickinson parody,
yes,
or a
okay.
spoof
Okay.
there, and that's okay because she is. I mean, we were intentionally twisting that poem because we will not stop for death. But it is public domain, so you do have more leeway with it.
I just want to say, I think that's a fair mind of like, I know everything that we create has been done before, and that's in, it's been done in some shape or form. And as artists, as writers, we're constantly trying to create something that's original, um, without having the idea sink into the back of our heads that, oh, this has been done time and time again. I mean, because once you get locked into the idea that this has been done time and time again, you kind of are less influenced to want to create. But with that said, I think that's a fear of mine is like writing something that I am so in love with, and I'm so like, this is awesome, and then I turn around and somebody, because I can imagine in your case, like if you had promoted that and within your literary circle, if like somebody was like, if they like that, hey,
Yeah,
hey Ari, I don't know if you know this, but that thing you wrote, I
hey,
don't
look,
think you wrote like,
it happened to George Harrison, right? He wrote something that he ended up later having to admit that it was actually someone like he
uh,
did it subconsciously. He said, um, so it has happened to people
mhm.
before.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to plagiarize, and
Yeah,
once again, like I think whether if you're a college student writing a report and you're trying to be original, or you're trying to write the next treatment or script for like a short, or even in your case, you're writing a either a short novel or a long novel, like there's always that thought in the back of your head is this original, is this unique, and is this
yeah.
mine, or is it a basis of the encouragement from over the years, of me being an advent fan, of me remembering things, of me, um
But you see,
it's
but the thing is, it always will be, right? To
okay.
some extent, like you don't want to plagiarize, you don't want to copy, and you don't want to just be a pastiche. You don't want just to be fan
Mm,
fiction of whatever it is you're writing. But there's always influence, and there has been influence since the beginning, right?
okay.
Virgil was trying to write an epic like Homer, right?
Yeah.
Dante was trying to write like Virgil, and even had Virgil be his guide in the underworld, right? It's been going on, right? It's been going on since people have been writing literature, that there are these archetypes and there's these stories, and people are, if you're intentional about it, you're able to take the form and make it your own.
Okay.
There's a way. There are ways to do it, and there's ways to do it authentically, right? So you need to know your source material, and you need to know your source material well enough to break with your source material when you need to.
Yeah.
And in terms of that other thing, like when it happens, like something subconsciously comes through, the difference between now and 10 years ago, whenever this happens, so easy to find it now. YouTube. You ever have even a suspicion, just type it into Google. Like type it. I always like when I used to teach high school English. I always told my students, I said, don't plagiarize. Like if I ever suspect you, I might not be able to get beyond the paywall that you paid for that essay, but I could get up to that paywall. I could find out who you bought it from through a Google search, right? If I just take a few unique phrases, type them in, you know,
And
you
it's
know
funny
anything
'cause
about searching, you
going
can
into
do
that
it.
more, going into that even more, just for a second, like there are websites that literally are devoted to stuff like that too.
Yeah.
Like so, even if you can't find it on a Google search, there is a website out there that you will be able to find it.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I think that
they also have things now like you could type your writing into this program and it'll tell you who you write like. It's like
okay,
you write like Agatha Christie, you write like Stephen King, you write like
that's pretty interesting.
whoever, and it's weird and it's disconcerting, especially if you get someone who you're not going for. Um, although sometimes it get like I was writing something that was a Sherlock Holmes influence thing, and I put it into that program that said, "You write like Agatha Christie." I'm like, okay, it's a detective, but it's the wrong one.
I think it's interesting that we do live in a time frame where if you tell the younger generations that when you had to do research, there was no internet, you had to physically pick up a book, they're amazed. But I can also imagine that if you tell this generation that there was once a time you could plagiarize someone to pass a course and you passed, they would also be like, "Oh shucks, like they missed a good error." Like, and I'm not saying that plagiarizing is a good error, but I will say that Google has allowed for us, if you do the extensive work, to find out if something has been copied or plagiarized or word for So we do live in a very interesting time with social media and the access that we didn't we just have this conversation recently, Sean?
We had this conversation recently, and I am a proponent of okay, I'm not a proponent of plagiarization, but I am a proponent of the fact that when you're in a time crunch, you need help.
Geektopians, he doesn't speak for us. I would recommend that you do the work. Cheaters never prosper. Wink.
I didn't say cheat. I didn't say
Wait,
cheat.
what?
Because sometimes you need help. You need help
Well,
finishing a paper.
but I think there's nothing wrong with, like, I remember in the 90s, like 90s television, like the whole family time era would always one kid would always do footnotes. And I remember there was always this thing where the parent was mad at their kid for writing the report based on footnotes, because footnotes wait, am I pronouncing it wrong? Is it footnotes or cliff notes? It's cliff notes, right? Cliff notes. So I can imagine that like in this day and age where, I mean, people still use cliff notes to kind of remember things for reports or like tests and stuff like that. But I do remember where like it was this big deal in the 90s where like TV writers would just be like, "Oh, Zach cheated with cliff notes," and I've always like, okay, what's the? At least he didn't plagiarize like the whole report, like.
I usually
That
tell
was,
my students, right? I don't mind if you use it as long as you're also reading the book. Like,
yeah.
use it as a study guide. That's what it was intended for. If something's not clear, use it. But don't use it instead, because I can tell if you use it instead.
Oh, that's right.
You
Because
know.
Cliff Notes were the easy way to write a book report without reading the book. That's what it was.
Yeah, that's why they always used to say the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
Give us the Cliff Notes version.
Well, yeah, but they have so many of them now. But all these different things. But again, if you use it as a study guide, that's fine. But read the book, or else you're missing out. And that's the thing. Like, I'm writing this Edgar Allan Poe stuff. If I read the Cliff Notes instead of reading Edgar Allan Poe,
you would never
I've never have written this book.
Right.
If I was reading Edgar Allan Poe,
Okay.
and I didn't quite understand, like, why is it a raven? Like, what when the raven lands on the Busta Palace, which is Athena,
Mhm.
like, did I get when I was in 8th grade and I was in school, like, did I get that it was you know, the subconscious or the supernatural taking precedence over
Mhm.
the rational represented by Athena, the goddess of wisdom, that type of thing? You know, that's what, maybe you need a study guide, or if your teacher tells you, right, you don't understand the point the teacher's trying to make about that,
Right.
then that type of thing can be a resource to help you. But you're missing out if you don't read it in the original, you know?
Right.
Mhm.
Like I was in high school, what influenced me was Shakespeare. Like
Mhm.
that's what influenced me to go into like, to try acting and to try
Yeah.
this and that. Just reading Shakespeare and reading heck, Macbeth is still one of my favorite books, that
Oh,
and
okay.
Othello, those two are my favorite plays. And
Um,
acting upon those was just amazing.
And you know what? And there's gonna be words in Shakespeare you don't understand that you're gonna have to look up. And
Right.
that's fine. But at least try to read it. Like, and the thing is, if you actually watch Shakespeare, and that's the thing that you can do now. If you watch Shakespeare, it's so much easier to understand because you have the actors and
Hmm.
they're like there was just a great adaptation of Macbeth that came out last year. The was it the one with Denzel in it?
Yes.
You see that was great, and I think like, and you could go see that in the movie theater if you knew nothing about Macbeth, you wouldn't have had trouble following that.
Yeah.
You know, that's
I'll
it's a
say
play.
Much Ado About Nothing is one of my favorite
Mm.
Shakespeare stories. But not to be cliche, so what you guys are saying is Geektopians, the book is better.
Yes, always, always better.
Yes,
So
the book is always better,
the book
or
is
the
always
comic
better.
book in some cases.
Yes,
The comic book is always better. The manga is better. I know there are Geektopians right now that are like, I see what you did there. See what you did there. One of those the book is better fans. But to your point, yeah, I think so I think we talked about this when we had Chris on the show, that I was saying like I feel like the older you get as an adult, the sense of imagination and engagement in imagination slowly slips away because you're dealing with the real world and things that are in your control and out of your control. And I think books allow us as adults to keep a perspective of imagination, whether if it's the depth of the words, the creation of world building, or even the definition of defining an object or a scenery or a place. I think books really help to hone in on imagination that we tend to slowly lose, and we rely on movies to fulfill it. To um yeah, I don't know, maybe it's just a one-sided perspective, but I just
I
feel like
mean,
books.
books are a more active medium, right? Because you have to do more of the act of creation than as when if you're watching something, right? Because even if it's something that's illustrated, even if it's like even if it's a comic book or something where there's illustration on the page, they're not moving, right? You have to hear the voices in your head,
Mhm.
right? You are participating in the process of creation along with the author, along with the illustrator, because you have to engage with it in a different way. It's an active engagement with entertainment, whereas watching a TV show, watching a movie is a more passive version. Not that there's anything wrong with that; that it has its place too. But people say everybody sees the adaptation, right? They do an adaptation of a book, they do an adaptation of a comic, or whatever. They say that person, especially a book. Let's say a book that's not illustrated, because they always say, "Oh, that's not how I imagine them." And
Mm.
then whoever it is, the actor who plays whatever character it is, right? They say that's not how I imagine them. But then you go back to the book and you look at the description, and the actor that they chose actually follows the description, but they never match the description in your head. You never.
You mean, man? Listen, I could go all day about how people can have their interpretations of something, right? And it doesn't fit the narrative that they have. But meanwhile, let's say, for example, the artist, right? Let's say if someone, the artist or the writer or whatever, they literally imagine this person being that, like say this actor, imagine literally go fitting into this role. And because people had their mindset already on a certain thing, they just get so angry.
Yeah. But the thing is, it'll never be the character that you imagined in your head while you were reading it, because that's your own personal thing, right? They could be great, but it'll never be the same as the way you imagined it.
Right.
It'll never sound the way that it sounded in your head. You know.
So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, just want to mention the name of the book, Into That Dark Peering.
Into that darkness.
Into that darkness peering. Yeah, let me not butcher it. Let me do this one more time. Geektopains, the title of the book is Into That Darkness Peering. Written by A.A. Rubin or Ari, which I'm always like, Ari, what do you prefer, A.A. Rubin or Ari Rubin?
Right, so here's the thing with that. You could call me Ari when we're talking, because Ari is actually my real name.
Okay.
It's and the A, it's Ari Alexander Rubin. So
Okay.
when I first started writing, I started writing as Ari Rubin. My first couple stories published by Ari Rubin way back in 2002, when I first started publishing things. And then, we were talking internet, all that stuff, search engine optimization, all that kind of thing. There was an Ari Rubin who was a voice actor who had an IMDb page. And his stuff always came up before my stuff because he was on IMDb. So I was advised that I should do something to get, a unique thing. So I said, I play around with different things. I ended up going with my real initials, A.A. Rubin, Ari Alexander Rubin, not because I grew up in the 90s and I was trying to be first in the Alta Vista search, which used to go alphabetical. That's not the reason, but it's actually my real name, A.A. Rubin. Sounded good. A lot of fantasy writers use their initials in some capacity. Fantasy science fiction writers, it's a common thing to do. And it's not even really a pen name because it's actually my real initials. So the book is by A.A. Rubin. If you want to search for any of my stuff, it's A.A. Rubin or The Surreal Ari, at The Surreal Ari across any of my platforms. But I publish under A.A. Rubin. I've been doing it for a number of years now. And it's better in this age of, people need to be able to find you. So
yeah,
I think I pronounced your name too quick, so I'm going to try one more time.
Yeah.
Geektopains, here we go. Into That Darkness Peering, written by A.A. Rubin. I think you gotta give it space. Illustrated by Marika Brousianou. I'm going to butcher her name. I'm sorry, Marika. Brousianou. You can find Into That Darkness Peering on Amazon. We will be posting the link both on the podcast, which we're on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast, as well as we will be putting it on our YouTube channel. So feel free to check out Into That Darkness Peering. You can find A.A. Rubin at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. At Surreal Ari, and his website,
The Surreal Ari. Yeah.
The Surreal Ari. Sean, you take over because I am butchering. I am.
all right. This is what's going on. All right. This is a really good book. All right. You guys need to go to Amazon, look up Into That Darkness Peering, written by A.A. Rubin, illustrated by Marika Brousianou. Right. You have to look up, if you want to see more works from A.A. Rubin, you need to go to The Surreal Ari on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or you can go to his website, www.aarubin.com. If you want to check out more artwork after you read the book, right, you could check out Marika Brousianou's links at marika.bruce.art on Instagram and on Facebook at Marika Brousianou.
She's actually doing a very cool. She's doing a tarot deck this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So check out her stuff. It's the same type of pen and ink stuff that she did for this book. It's very cool.
Are there any upcoming cons for the remainder of the year that people can also stop by, see you? Will Comic Book School, I guess that's a two-part question, will Comic Book School also be at any of those cons coming up that they can check out. The Geektopians can not only check out your work, but other contributors' works as well.
Yep. So in terms of cons, I'm still setting up my schedule for the following year. I'm not sure
Okay.
if I'm going to be. I'm not going to sure if I'm going to be at WinterCon yet. I haven't heard about that. But I'll probably do some of the local cons here. CradleCon,
Okay.
definitely EternalCon again, and Comic Book School always has a big presence at EternalCon.
Okay.
We do panels and we have a table there as well. Marika's based in Chicago. Wore my
Okay.
Chicago blue shirt for her today. But I don't know if she's going to be at any upcoming cons. She's usually at Wizard World Chicago.
Okay.
She sometimes comes. She didn't make it to New York Comic Con this year. She usually does. So I would look for her around the Chicago area.
All right. With that being said, Geektopians, we glad to be back. We glad to have this deep dive conversation with AA Ari. I love your
Hey,
name.
Rubin.
AA. Oh God. Geektopians. You know what? You know what? I'm not doing this. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done.
Ari,
You see what happens? So hold on. This is my rant for a minute, right?
all
So
right.
I say, Sean, take over, and Sean does the breakdown, and he's so cool, and you guys love him, and you're like, yeah, Sean, rah rah, thank you for doing a great job, getting names pronounced right. All the while, I'm here doing my best. All right, I'm doing my best. All right, yeah, I have a speech impediment. Yeah, I think quicker than I say the things I want to say, but Geektopians, it's me. It's radio. It's Charlie. We episode 45. Why are we like this? We were never focused on Sean. It's always been us. You and me. All right? From day one. Charlie and the Geektopians. I'm hurt.
The one that coined the name, the Geektopians.
That's right. So really, Geektopians, you should appreciate me more. You should value me. This is it. Some people would say that Sean would say I'm being conceited right now, but I'm just making it very clear that
Ari, I
I
apologize.
Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Rubin. Dari, give me whatever. I'm done.
Thank you,
I'm done.
Ari, for coming on board. Thank you for
I'm done
indulging
now.
us, and thank you for bringing your book. We cannot wait to read it. I definitely want to read it again. I'm gonna definitely have my girlfriend, because she also is like a big goth. So I'll have her enjoy it. We're gonna get it from Amazon just so we can support. And we hope to see you again. For other projects, because I know
Yes.
you're gonna be constantly doing projects.
Yes.
I
Hopefully we
would get
try.
mine from Amazon, but I want to run into you at a con and get mine signed in person, so I can get a photo of you and me. And
I will get it, and then when I see you again, I will have you sign
Get
it.
it again. All right.
yes,
Excellent. And thank
all
you.
right,
Thank you so much for having me.
all right. It's
And
going to
yeah,
send Ari to the back. All right, we're gonna send Sean to the back. Oh wait, sorry about that, Sean. Sorry,
Wow,
I
really?
forgot you. Sometimes I forget you're my co-host and you're not a guest, and I apologize about that. It's been a rough week. We have a lot of projects coming up. This weekend we will be.
Well, this
This.
weekend we're working on various projects, which we will not
Mhm.
be able to disclose until later. However,
Okay.
it is in the pipeline. We are
Yeah.
doing stuff.
The pipeline.
We're gonna be expanding our projects. We're gonna be bringing back projects. We're also going to be bringing new projects.
Yes, people. G is for Geek is coming back, and we're going to be in the same room, and it's going to be more banter, more fun, more banter, more Charlie, left Sean, more.
And he won't be able to dismiss me because I'll be in the same room.
I don't know. I've been before. I know I'm ranting, but before we sign off, I was able to become a sorcerer supreme. Um, Wong is teaching me. I haven't gotten my honorary ring yet to do things, but I'm coming along. I'm coming along. Real talented, real prospects in me. You would be proud of me, Sean, if you acknowledge me like your tribal chief. You would acknowledge me.
Really? Do we have to go there? Do we have to talk about your Harry Potter thing?
First of all, I wish I had my wand. I'm looking at it right now. You know what? I hope I didn't knock anything over. At NYCC, Sean helped me buy my first wand. I've come to terms that I am a Slytherin. So here is my wand. I've learned several new spells. They just so happen to be the 3 forbidden spells. Didn't learn to my choice. What is it? Havada Kedavra. Yeah. So so I've just been practicing. And Sean said I went a little too far because I asked him to send me the orders that Anakin got. What was the orders?
Order 66.
Yeah, so I asked Sean to send me Order 66. And even though that's a Star Wars reference, I went into the wizarding version of the school with my wand, and I don't. Do you call them Padawans? What is the wizard version of Padawans? And I had an Anakin moment with my wand, and it was really dark. So I'm just gonna put this away. I'm just gonna put this wand away because I think that's assault with a magical weapon. Anyway, hey Geektopians, thank you for joining us on this episode. We hope you had fun. We hope you learned a lot. Definitely pick up Ari and Marika's book, Into That Darkness Pairing. Stay tuned, as like Sean said, we're working on stuff from out of the pipeline. I'm Charlie Radio Williams.
And this is SeanLuc.
And as always, we are out of here.